Welcome to LiveDaf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem and welcome back to today's Daf Yomi Maseches CHULLIN Daf Samachay. We begin 6 lines from the top of the Yomit. Aval Amru Chachamim Kol Oif V'chul. Back to the Mishnah, where we learn that although we don't necessarily find clear signs of kosher by birds stated, in the Torah, however, the Chachamim surmised from circumstance that the following constitute kosher signs by birds. How do they surmise this? Based on the list of birds provided in the Torah, 24 in total, which the Torah considers non-kosher. And based on that, we know that birds such as those, which feature certain features, certain qualities, are in fact not kosher. Otherwise, you're good. So what are those kosher signs? We have one which is absolute, called doires, grabs its prey. Different ways to understand this. Rashi learns it, rips it apart on the ground, then it eats piece by piece. Tosfos says even kosher birds do that. Rather, it means it doesn't wait until its prey dies. Okay, in any case, doires is an absolute siman of unkosher, expression of violence, of aggressiveness, whatever. If a bird is a doires, you know for a fact it's confirmed to be non-kosher. If it's not a doires, then we have other kosher signs which the bird is meant to have. Now we know it's confirmed to be kosher. So happens to be, as we learned the other day, that even one of those kosher signs is sufficient. So one of those 3 other kosher signs is enough to confirm kashrus of a bird. Tanya, Rabban Gamliel Eimer. Doires, if he's a doires va'oichel, he eats in this manner, yodua shu tami, it's confirmed as tami. If he's not a doires, now we have what to talk about. Yesh le etzbe yisera, he has that extra toe. The zefek, he has a zefek, which is the crop, the storage, where the bird stores its food initially before it goes into the digest. The karkavan niklaf, and also the kurkavan, the gizzard, which has a couple of layers, peels, separates. It could be peeled. Then you know, biyadoshu utar. So these are kosher signs which confirm that in fact it's a kosher bird. Rav Lezer b'Tzadok Omer, the way to tell if he's a doires, you extend a little a cord used to do surveys, right? So it's like a thin cord, and you perch the bird above it. You see how he handles himself. Im chaylik es raglov, he splits his toes, shtaim lakan, 2 fingers, 2 toes on either side of the. Then you know he's a doires and he's tummy. Shalish lakan machs lakan, if it's 3 toes on one side of the cord and one on the other, then you know he's not a doires. Shimon Lazar Eimer, a different way to tell, kol oif hakolet min ha'avir tame, fowl which catches its prey mid-air, or its food, whatever it is, it catches it mid-air, then you know he's a doires, he's tame. Ask the Gemara, well, tziparta nami, even the bird called tziparta, which we know to be a kosher bird, nami mikol kato, does the same. Intercepts its food mid-air. Amar Abaye koilet v'oichel kamrin, we meant that it intercepts and it eats it in the air before placing it on the ground. Then you know he's a doires and he's tame. Acherim oimrim, another way to tell, shachenim tmeim tame. The bird dwells, he associates with non-kosher birds, with birds that are known to be non-kosher, then he too is tamei. If he hangs out with the kosher birds, that confirms that he's kosher as well. Kaman, this concept of guilty by association, in line with whose opinion is that? Rabbi Eliezer, right? It's not for nothing. The zarzer bird decides to live together with the ravens, which is a known non-kosher bird. You know why he's there? He's of their ilk. He's of their variety. El Bnei Shu Mina. He's the same min, the same species. Chachamim disagree. They say there's no proof from the fact that he hangs out with them. So the above mentioned shita of achirim, that association indicates status, is it going like Rabbi Lezer only, and not like the Rabban? Afilu teim Rabban. You know what? That statement could be in line with the Rabbanan as well. They were only speaking about merely association. Here we're talking that he associates with them, and he appears in his appearance. The bird looks like the non-kosher birds. So you have two indicators that confirms his status as well. Afil Tim Rabbanan Shachin, we're speaking that he dwells with them. Vinid, man, he appears like them. Kamrina, we're talking about that type of situation. That's right, that it's the same min, and he's tamei as well. Okay, now we shift to grasshoppers. Mishnah says, what are the signs? What are the kosher signs of a grasshopper? So, before we begin the Gemara, perhaps let's just take a quick view at the Psukim. Some of you have it on the side of the Gemara. So it's in Vayikra, Perak Yud Aleph, Pasuk Chaf Aleph through Chaf Beis. And it reads like this. Achazeh toichlu mikol sheretz oif eilach al arba, asher lo yikra ayim imal raglov, l'nater behen al ha'oretz. Okay, so he has the kra'ayim, which are the jumping legs, which help him, jump. And that constitutes a kosher grasshopper. And then the Torah goes into a detailed list, citing 4 examples of kosher grasshoppers. And next to each one we have leminoi, which indicates that it's not limited to that specific one, leminoi, to its ilk, to something which is similar to it as well, its type. So it's expansive. As elam hem toichlu, as arbe. Now arbe, Rashi says, is not bald. Some grasshoppers are bald. He's not bald. Leminoi, to its type. As a salam, another kind of grasshopper, which is actually bald-headed. Lemineihu, to its type. Then vesa chargoil. Lemineu, chargoil, Rashi says, has a tail, which is unique to the chargol, limineu, v'esa chagav limineu. So the Torah mentions the 4 legs. It has the kartzulim, right, which Mishnah mentions, the jumping legs as well. So extra long legs, which he uses to jump. And the Mishnah adds 2 more kosher signs that are required to determine its kashrus. It's 4 wings, and that the wings would cover most of the grasshopper. Rabbi Yisrael Mishnah adds another point as well. It has to be called chagav. It has to be part of the official original chagav species. Now, what about if he has a long head, which is not typical amongst the, right? It's something unique. That's going to be subject actually to machlekes between 2 brises. Tana Devei Rav, the brisa that was learned in the yeshiva, more known brisa, which does not allow that type of grasshopper to be eaten, whereas Tana Devei Shmuel, based on a klal prato klal, will tell us that actually even the long-headed grasshoppers are acceptable. We'll get to that soon. Okay. Ubechagavim, kol sheyesh lo, the Mishnah says the chagav has the 4 legs, the 2 extra long jumping legs, the wings which cover most of its body. That makes it kosher. Now, what does most mean? My rubai. Most of what? Amar vidam arav reiv arkai. Suppose the grasshopper is 2 inches long, so the wings cover most of the length. V'amrila, some learn reiv kefa, most of the circumference. Amar papa, you gotta have both. Hilkach, since we have 2 versions, we have to apply it both ways. Bein and reiv arkai, ubein reiv kefa, required that it covers most of its length and most of its bodily circumference as well. Tan Rabbanan. Suppose the grasshopper doesn't yet have what the Torah calls kra'ayim, which the Mishnah calls kartzulim, those extra long, legs, which help it, jump around. It doesn't have yet. It's not yet developed. It's going to come later. Tana Rabban, ein lo achshav. Currently, the grasshopper doesn't yet have the jumping legs. But later on it's going to grow. We know this type of grasshopper will develop these crying. For instance, hazachal. Okay, the zachal type, which is going to get a later mutter. You can eat it because it's about, the type, the variety, the species. And since this type will develop crying, it's okay even now. So the crying are just it's a simon. It's a sign of kashrus. It's not like the presence of the crying make it kosher. It's a type of grasshopper which will grow crying that is considered kosher. Well, this I agree with this halacha. In fact, I'll even source it to you in the pasuk itself. Take a look at the Sefer Torah. The word asher loy kra'ayim is spelled, believe it or not, with an aleph, like loy. Loy with the aleph means no, right? Loy with a vav, lamed vav means yes, he has. Loy to him. Loy with an aleph means he does not have. So it's spelled with an aleph to indicate that even though he doesn't yet, at this early stage, have those kra'ayim, it's okay because he will eventually develop this feature. Asher loy kra'ayim teaches us even though currently he doesn't yet have the jumping legs, but he will grow them later on, it's okay. Now, what is this zachal grasshopper? My zachal, well, we call it askara, a word that they were familiar with. That's the type of grasshopper which will develop the crime later on. Okay, so now, as promised, we're going to go through the psukim and cite two brises. One is a regular brisa, which the Gemara later calls Talmud Bavli, which was known in the Beis Medrash. It was a well-learned brisa. And then we have Talmud Rabbi Shmuel, which was known more or less primarily to the Talmidim Rabbi Shmuel, and hence their different titles, Talmud Bavli, Talmud Rabbi Shmuel. Now, there'll be a slight difference between the two brises. They're both going to analyze the psukim word by word, but in terms of the conclusion, it's important to know in advance. Rashi points this out for us a couple of times here, that the end game is that according to the first brisa, which we call Talmud Bavli, a grasshopper is only mutter if it has the kosher signs, right? The 4 kosher signs. Whether it's bald, not bald, tail, no tail, that's not relevant, because as per the example cited in the Torah, we have the arbe, we have the salam, the chargol, and the chagav. Some are bald, some are not. Some have tail, some are not. So, bottom line is, it's not dependent upon baldness or tailness. Rather, if you have the 4 simane kashrus, the 4 legs, the 2 jumping legs, the wings, which cover most of it, you're good. But if it's something unique, out of the ordinary, something which is different than these, for example, such as a long-headed grasshopper, that would not be acceptable. Whereas according to Talmud Bavli, we apply a formula called klal, prat klal. You see, according to Talmud Bavli, it's klal or prat. Torah says, well, asher loy kra'ayim, as long as he has the jumping legs, and the Torah specifies arbe, salam, chargol, right? Which is klal or prat, a general reference to sort of a bigger picture. Then Torah specifies and limits it and restricts it to only these types and those that are very similar to those types. But something which is unique and different would not be included. According to Talmud Bavli, no. It's more expansive than that. It's more generous than that. Klal pratu klal. Asher loy kra'ayim is a klal. Any grasshopper which has this feature. Then we have specifics. Then we have lumineu. To its type, to its ilk. It's more generous. It's expansive to include others as well. Even something which is not exactly a carbon copy of those 4 examples, those 4 grasshoppers in the Torah. Even something which is different, has a long head. That's also included and acceptable. Okay, so that's going to be at the end of the road. We're going to have a whole daf of discussion back and forth, but that's going to be the ultimate result. Tana Rabbanan. As Elohim Toichlu, which grasshopper is acceptable? So the pasuk starts by giving a general, sort of almost vague description. It says, asher loy kra'ayim, as long as he has those jumping legs, right? That's in the previous pasuk. And now in the next pasuk, as Elohim Toichlu, we have some very specific types named, 4 in total. So arbe, right? I'll just read the pasuk first. It's the arba liminoi, v'sa salam limineu, v'sa chargo limineu, v'sa chagav limineu. What is the arba? It says the arba. That's what we knew. They knew as zegoivai, a certain type, which Rashi says is similar to the right. So this arba is not bald. It's not bald-headed. Salam. What's the next item? Is a rashain, which they knew what it was. What is the chargal mentioned in the pasuk? Is a nipul. What is the fourth item? Chagav is a gadya. Mata malayma. Why does the pasuk add the word liminoi and limineu near each name? Limineu 4 times in Galat Pa'amim. Lahavi, to include. So with the arba comes along liminoi, tziperis krum, another very similar type of grasshopper, which is almost a carbon copy of the arba. They're both not bald. The next, limineu near the next item, which is the salam, is meant to include v'yochna Yerushalmis, a different grasshopper, which is bald, similar to the salam. The next is vartzuvia, which has a tail similar to the chargal, and varazmanis is from the chagav, variety, which is Rashi says doesn't look like the other ones mentioned earlier. Bottom line, that's the end of the list. We can't include other ones. Let's say ones with long heads. No. So we have very limited, restrictive list here. These and those that are very similar to these. So that's the first price. Why? Because we have the klal, ashalei kra'ayim, anything with the kosher signs. But then we have a very specific limited list to indicate only grasshoppers which have the 4 simana tahara but are similar to these are going to be good, but not a long-headed one. That's out of the picture. However, the Rabbi Shmuel Tana comes a second brisa, which is going to present a more generous, broader equation. Elu klali klalis, velu prata pratis. Rashi explains, and we'll understand it better later on in the Gemara, that we have really repetitions in the pasuk. We appear to have redundancies. Because once we apply a klal prato klal system, we don't need such a detailed list. It's all about concept. Right? Once the Torah says all grasshoppers with kosher signs, and then lists you a couple examples to give you like an idea. Basically, now you can take that formula and expand it and say, look, anything which is somewhat similar, as long as that has the kosher signs, but baldness, tail, long, that doesn't. And then it says liminehu, right? Which says, well, everything is in there. So that's klal prato klal to tell you, as long as you're somewhat matching the criteria of those specific examples, you're good. So there was really no need for the Torah to give you 4 examples of specific names of grasshoppers, nor do we need the limineu, which is a klal, sort of a general, undefined description, a broad, generous description, to be stated next to the extra, sort of unnecessary grasshopper types, which shouldn't have been stated to begin with, apparently, right? Again, once you have arba, you have a couple of examples with lamina, with limineu, you don't need to have the other 2. They're extra. And certainly the limineu stated next to them is also extra. So the extra specifics, there are extra generalities. What are they coming to teach us? We'll get to that later. There be Shmuel Tana, Elu klali klalis. We have a redundancy of generalities, extra limineus. Ve'elu prati pratis. Here we have also extra specifics, extra grasshopper names, which don't seem to be necessary. Which will lead us to our conclusion that in fact you can include other types which are dissimilar to the list in the Torah, even long-headed grasshoppers, etc. Now, arba on the list is a goivai. Okay, that fits with the earlier brisa as well. Okay, it was known to them as goivai. Now, the word laminoi near the arba, laminoi, yeah, lahavi tziperes kramim. Okay, that's exactly as we said before, because it's similar to the arba. They both are not bald, right? So okay, at this point, we could only include a grasshopper that shows up without a baldness. Okay, we turn to Talmud Bavli, right? What if you have a different type, which is different than the arba? It has a gabach, it's a bald-headed grasshopper. How do you know to include that as well? Okay, the next item on the grasshopper list is salam, which is bald. And what is that? That's what we call zen nipol, who's known to them as nipol. And the word minehu next to salam, which includes a similar type. Lahavi esa ushkaf. That will include the ushkaf, which is a bald-headed grasshopper. And as Rashi points out, we also mean to include the Yochne Yerushalmis mentioned before in the first brisa, because again, he has similar qualities, similar features. He has the baldness of the salam. And Rashi explains, again, we're talking according to Talmud Bavli, who will have a more expansive, broader view of the criteria of what constitutes a kosher grasshopper. It's based on the klal pratu klal, which means to say anything which is somewhat similar to the examples cited are included. Now, ve'en le'labo ve'legabachas. So at this point, we have only included a grasshopper which shows up without a gabach. Gabach is a bald-headed grasshopper. He doesn't have it. He's in because of the arba. He's similar to the arba. Haba v'yesh legabachas. Likewise, if he shows up with a bald head, because he's similar to the salam. But these two, arba and salam, are unique in a sense that they have no tail. Haba v'en le'zonav. So grasshopper which shows up without a tail, since he's similar to the two examples cited in the pasuk, he's in. But suppose he has a tail, he's different. How do we know to include him as well? Here comes the next item in the pasuk. What's the chargal? That's the rashain that we're familiar with. And the word luminehu next to the chargal covers anything which is similar to the chargal as well. Who have the kosher signs, plus the fact is they have a tail. So they're similar to the chargal and they're in. Okay, so at this point we know bald, no bald, tail, no tail. You're good as long as you have the four kosher signs, right? The four legs, the jumping legs, the wings, which cover most of the. At this point, we have only included grasshopper which shows up without a gabachas, or with a gabachas, right? A one without a tail. One with a tail. Because he's similar to the precedents on that list. But so far we only know to include only those without a long head. Okay? Because the examples cited thus far don't have long heads. But let's say grasshopper shows up with a long head. How do we know to include him as well? Amrus, the answer is like this. Make sort of a common denominator. What's common to all three, to the arba, the salam, and the chargav? Not really very similar. Each one is unique in his way. So you have to come up with some sort of formula, some sort of commonality between all three. Because lo yiroi arba, the feature found in the arba, he's not bald, right? Kiroi chargal is not like the chargal, who is bald. V'lo yiroi chargal, kiroi arba. Nor is the feature found in the chargal like the feature found in the arba. Right? The arba has no tail and the chargal does. The chargal is bald and the arba is not. So they're very dissimilar. And likewise, v'lo yiroi shneim kiroi hasalam, nor do they match in their features. The salam grasshopper, because the salam is different than the arba. Salam is bald and the arba is not. the salam is different than the chargal, because the salam has no tail and the chargal does. So you can't really say that the kashrus status of a grasshopper depends on bald, no bald, tail, no tail. You can't say that. Rather, you have to draw a different conclusion. So what's common to all three grasshoppers cited thus far? What's the common denominator? That they have the four standard kosher signs. He has the 4 legs, the 4 wings, and the jumping legs, and the wings cover most of the body. That gives us a license, a green light to include any grasshopper which has these kosher signs. You're in. That's your rite of passage. Likewise, any other grasshopper, as long as he has these kosher signs, he's good. Even if he has a long head, or doesn't matter. He's in. So you see, according to Talmud Bavli, we're more inclusive. We'll include even a long-headed grasshopper. That's not a factor at play, as long as you have the 4 kosher signs you're in. And we're going to see later, again, it depends on how you learn the psukim. According to Talmud Bavli, it's klal prato klal. There's a klal which the pasuk begins with. As long as you have the kra'ayim, kra'ayim, the jumping legs. And then Torah specifies arba and this and that. And then Torah comes back with the mineu to its type. I want to include more. Klal prato klal tells you, look, as long as you're somewhat similar, somewhat matching to the specific cited in the pasuk, you have these common features. You have the 4 kosher signs, you're good. Okay, one more point in the brayso. So what about this grasshopper called tzartzur, which the Chachamim knew to be unkosher? Why is he unkosher? He has the 4 kosher signs. Yesh l'arba raglayim, v'al knafayim, right? V'katzulim, knaf v'chaviyaz rubai. So why is he out? Yachal yekash mutar, perhaps he's okay. Tamlayim chagav. The word chagav is an extra word, according to Talmud Bavli. Again, it's not needed because we already have enough examples in the pasuk to give us sort of a formula to work with. So chagav is an extra word. To tell you, here's another condition for kashrus. You have to be called chagav. You have to be part of the original, authentic chagav species. Tamlayim chagav sheshmoi chagav. Well, if that's the case, let's take it to the other extreme. As long as your name is in, you're in. Even without exhibiting the kosher signs. Ishmei chagav. So if you're allowing a type which is called chagav, yochal einbay kol hasiman alola, perhaps even without, in the absence of the 4 simanim, you'll be okay. Tambalayim liminehu. So chagav liminehu tells you, no. It's not enough to have your name. You have to be like the chagav type. There's a certain type called chagav, which the Chachamim knew has the 4 kosher signs. Let's exhibit the 4 kosher signs you're not in. So bottom line, according to Talmud Bavli, which we just concluded, this brayso just ended right here, and conclusion is that we have klal prato klal, a general, specific and a general reference in the pasuk to tell you, bring him in, include him in, as long as they have kosher signs. Even if your head is long, but provided your name is chagav. Paruch Ravacha, you had a question. How could you import? How could you include even a long-headed grasshopper? Look, the examples cited in the pasuk, the arba, the salam, etc., is true. They're not really on the same plane, like we said. One is bald, one is not, but they do have something in common. In a negative sense, they don't have long heads. So perhaps you have to work with that description, with that formula. You can't include a total foreign entity. You can't import a long-headed grasshopper and include him in the heter. And perhaps you'll say, that's not a relevant factor. Given the shavu b'dalat siman, my sinan, v'lei parchinan. So perhaps, since the long-headed grasshopper matches the examples in the pasuk in the sense that it has the 4 simanei kashrus, that's enough. Ma'asina we can include it without distinguishing and asking and challenging. It's enough of a reason to include it in the package. So if that's the premise that you're working with, I have another question. Chargol nami, the shavel hu lichtayv. Why did the pasuk even bother mentioning chargol? Chargol is the one with the tail. Leave it out. If anything similar, if anything that has 4 simanei kashrus, 4 kosher signs, 4 standard kosher signs, enough. Gives him a license, gives him the green light to be included. So why mention the chargol? Just because he has a long tail, who cares? Just because a tail, right? Regular tail. Who cares? Just because he's not similar to the arba and the salam? Since when is tail or no tail a determining factor? As long as he has the 4 standard kosher signs, you tell me that's enough. The chargol as well, since he's comparable to the arba and to the salam in a sense that they all have the 4 standard kosher signs. So skip the chargol. Leave him out of the list. Learn it from the arba salam. What am I trying to prove here? And apparently we do reckon with specific features. Apparently you can't do that because you can challenge this equation. That the chargol is different than the arba salam. They have no tail and he does. That's enough of a distinguishing factor, which doesn't allow him to be included without the pasuk explicitly including him and naming him by name. Well, if that's the case, so back to our story with the long, necked grasshopper, you can't just automatically bring him in. You can ask, you can't compare him to the grasshoppers on the list in the pasuk. They're different than him. Although they're different from each other, that's true, but they all have one commonality versus the long-headed one. They're not long-headed and he is. How could you compare him? How could you include him? It says, let me explain to you just one little point here, which will resolve this question. How did the Brisa allow itself sort of to bring in long-headed one into the list? Salam Yisera. The salam grasshopper on this list in the pasuk is really extra, unnecessary. Right? The pasuk again has arba, salam, chargol, and chagav. It could have simply had the first and the third, the arba and the chargol, and that would have served as basis for the salam as well. You don't need salam in the pasuk, so the extra salam is there to teach us something, to teach us that something unique, something new, something different can be included as well, and that's a long-headed grasshopper. Because that's the rule. When something is not needed for its own sake, the pasuk is extra, we apply it to where it's needed. And we apply it to bring in the long-headed grasshopper. Hence, according to Talmud Bavli, long-headed, long-necked grasshopper is back in the fold. Okay, let's see it inside. Salam. The salam grasshopper is superfluous. Why? Torah could have gone without mentioning salam. Who cares? So he's bald, he's different than the arba. I'm going to learn it out of the arba, not just the arba, chargol. Because once it has arba, which is not bald, and chargol, which is bald, that's enough of a precedent. That's served as basis for the chargol as well, for the salam as well. I can learn from a joint source, from the arba and the chargol. My parchas. What are you going to say? I can't learn the salam, which is bald, from the arba, which is not bald. Well, guess what? Your companion, the chargol, is also bald, and he's kosher. Hari chargol the gabachas. Oh, hold it, malach chargol the zanav. Oh, the chargol is different than the salam because the chargol has a tail and the salam doesn't. Hold it. Well, it depends on having a tail. Look at your companion. Hari Arbe Elizon, your Arbe friend doesn't have a tail and he's still kosher. Apparently, it's not dependent upon tail or no tail, bald or no bald. And we'll bring in the Salam into the family. As long as he has the 4 kosher signs, he's good. So why does the pasuk bother mentioning the Salam? It's superfluous, extra, unneeded. Salam, the cause, Rahman Alam, why mention the Salam on the list? It's not needed for its own sake. It's extra. Apply to something which is needed. Bring in the long-necked grasshopper. And that explains Tanit Bishmael. Okay, so according to this brisa, Tanit Bishmael, we have a klal uprato klal system going here. The klal is the general reference of the pasuk, Shalai Kra'im, any grasshopper which has the jumping legs. And then we have specifics, ha'arba, charga, which are specifics, to help us formulate a formula of criteria, i.e. the 4 kosher signs, 4 legs, the jumping legs, the wings, covering, right? And then we have the word leminoi near the arba, lemineo near the chargal, to complete the klal prato klal. These are general, right? Leminoi, lemineo. To tell you anything which is similar. Right? It doesn't have to specifically mean these types. Anything which is similar, which has the 4 kosher signs is in. Whether you're bald, not bald, tail, no tail. Now, we have extra words in the pasuk. Salam lemineu and chagav lemineu. And that's what Tanit Bishmael meant back when on Amar Aleph. Elu klole kloles, we have a double set of kloles, of limineios, which are extra. Velu prate prates, a double set of specifics, because salam, and chagav are extra. What's that for? It's coming to expand the klal prato klal, coming to tell you. Even a long-headed grasshopper is included, like the salam, provided that these things are called chagav, which is learned from the extra word chagav. Okay, continue to the next page. Okay, Makamifliki. So at the core, what's the point of the machlekes here, of this disagreement between Tanit Rav, who says no long-headed grasshoppers included, and Tanit Bishmael, who say, yep, they're kosher. Makamifliki. As we explained, Tanit Rav. What's the machlekes between Tanit Rav, which Rashi says is the first brisa, which was included in Teres Kohanim, which was Shagar Beis HaMedrash, everybody was well versed in it. That's why it's called Tanit Rav. And the second brisa of Tanit Bishmael is called as such because it was only known amongst his Talmud. What's the machlekes about? What's the practical ramification of this whole discussion? Machlekes is about the long-necked grasshopper. The first brisa doesn't allow it. Tanit Rav, Savar, he holds, Asher Lo Kra'im, which is the first reference in the pasuk, that's a klal. If you have this, you're good. But then we have very specifics, very limiting language. Arbe, salam, chargal, chagav, limineu. So that's a very specific, limited list. That's a klal. That's a prat. That's a very limited, specific reference. So now all you have is a klal prat. General and specific. It's very limiting. What do I mean when I said that? I meant only these. And those that are duplicates of these, very similar to these. Ein b'chlal mashav afrat. You can only include this list in the klal. Demine in the lav demine loy. Only include something which is of the same min, the same ilk, the same species, as those examples in the Torah. The lav demine loy, but something which is a different min is not mutter. Umarbi, and I can only include the damile, those which are similar to these specific examples Mishnei Tzadin on both sides, which means to say, almost a carbon copy of those. The 4 kosher signs, A, and number 2, you can't be dissimilar. You can't have a long head, which is not found amongst those examples. And again, this is based on klal prat. However, Tanit Bishmael Savar, he holds no. Go further. It's a klal, it's prat, and then it's klal. Where's the second klal? Limineu. Even though, really, limineu has a different ring Then the first klal. The first klal is a little bit on the vague side, so to speak. Very, very broad. Ashalai krayim, as long as you have the jumping legs, you're in. Liminehu, which is cited right next to the specific example, a specific name of grasshopper name, is a very different type of klal. It is expansive, it has that generous, ring to it, that inclusive connotation, but it's a whole different type. You have to be similar to the example, to the grasshopper mentioned. You have to have the 4 simanim of tahara. So it's a little bit of a different type of song that he's singing. It's not necessarily the same type of wording. It's the two types of klals. Could you join them together? Could you combine them together into klal prat of klal? According to Rabbi Shmuel, the answer is yes. And that's the point of machlekes here. That's the issue. Talmud Bavli says no, you can't combine this type of generality with the other type of generality. They don't match. Not the same plane. They're not singing the same song. So ultimately, you're left with a klal prat, and you're very limited. No long-headed grasshoppers allowed. But according to Talmud Bavli, the first klal can team up with the second klal, even though they're somewhat dissimilar. Hence, you have a klal prat klal. Oh, and that it really expands it and allows much more. It allows for a broader formula, broader set of criteria, and even the long-headed grasshoppers included. Talmud Bavli Savar Yod Ashaloi Kra'ayim. That's a klal. Then we have the specifics: Arba, Solam, Chargav, Chagav. That's prat. Limenehu Chazav Kalal. It's a klal at the end. So we have a klal of prat of klal, which allows us to compare and bring in something which is even not 100% similar, isn't a carbon copy to the specifics. Tadani could only include Elikin prat, something which is similar, mostly similar to the specific examples in the pasuk. Umrabi, we can include Kol Didamali B'Chatzad, anything which is similar even on one side, which means to say one element of similarity, which means to say it has the 4 simanim of tahara, even though he's different in the sense that he has a long head. It's not relevant. It's not a factor, and he's okay. Ask the Gemara, how can you combine Ashaloi Kra'ayim, which is one type of klal, and Liminei, which is a different type of klal? V'lei dami klal kamo. The first klal is not comparable. Doesn't match. L'kol brasra to the second klal. Klal kamo, the first general reference is Ashaloi Kra'ayim. Amrachman. It says he has the jumping leg. The isleif, he has the legs. That's enough. That's sufficient. Echad, you can eat him. The less if he doesn't have those legs, you can't eat him. So it's very generous, giving you just one condition. Whereas Klola Basra, the Lomeneu, which is written next to the very specific types, is a much more restrictive generality. Adashavu barbosimanim, indicating you have to be comparable to the types mentioned, in the sense that you possess the 4 kosher sign, a very different type of reference. Could you combine them into a klal pat klal? Yep. Guess what? Tana Bishmoel, our Tana B'chlala Yoprati, with respect to the klal prat formulas, ki agavna doin. He will apply it in this sense, in this configuration. It doesn't dissuade him. It doesn't, In fact, throughout Shas, elsewhere, whenever we have this type of reference, that the doin Tana Bishmoel B'chlala Yoprati ki agavna, that Tana Bishmoel has no issue joining together these two dissimilar generalities into one combined klal prat klal. How do we know that to be true? From this very brisa. This is the source, mihocha, where it's evident that according to Tanna Bishmoel, there's no issue turning that into a klal prat klal. Let's just go back and review one more line in the brisa. According to Tanna Bishmoel, we also know that he has to be named the chagav, and the brisa considered if chagav is what determines yochol einboy kol hasiman alol, so even in the absence of the kosher signs is okay. Tamalei Limineu comes Limineu says no. Achiyu kol hasiman alolu, he has to be like the chagav in a sense. He has to have the 4 kosher signs. Ask the Gemara. Why would I even consider that as an option? Einboy kol hasiman alolu. If he has no kosher signs, mechatesi. Why would I even include him? Arba b'chargol ksiv. The pasuk specifically mentions examples of grasshoppers which have kosher signs. Arba and chag. The answer is like this: Eloi ksiv salam kedekamis. You're right. Without salam in the pasuk, I would say you have to be like the arba and the chargol, and you have to have the kosher signs. But now, Hashlich of Salam, now the pasuk mentions Salam, which is coming to teach us L'Rabuy to include even something which is dissimilar to the Arba and the Chargel, even the one with the long head. L'Rabuy Rosh Arach. So perhaps that tells you that similarity is not an issue. Perhaps I can include even this one. Even if he's so dissimilar, as long as he's somewhat similar, in his name, he's called Chagav. Maybe that's enough of a similarity, enough of a determining factor, Kamash Malon. That's why the pasuk adds Lumineu. No, he has to be of this Chagav type, which means to say he has to feature the 4 basic kosher signs meant for a kosher grasshopper. Now, one more thing, we find a little discrepancy in terms of the names. Maishnahasam da Amas Sam Salam za Rashain. In the first brisa, we said Rashain is the local name for Salam, and Nipol is the local name for Chargel. Chargel is Nipol. Maishnah, whereas in the second brisa we switch it. The Amos we say Nipol is the local name for Salam. Salam's a Nipol, and Rashain is the local name for Chargel. But Chargel is under Rashain. Is there any discrepancy in terms of the? Says the Gemara, no, it's just a matter of semantics, a matter of local points of reference. Depends where you live. They're both talking about the same grasshopper, but they have different names depending on different locations. Marki Asrei, the first brisa is working based on his place. Marki Asrei, and the second brisa is based on his place, but really there's no machlekes in terms of which grasshopper we're talking about. Okay, let's recap today's daf. We began with the kosher signs by birds. The first absolute sign is the fact that he's not a doiris, otherwise you know he's not kosher. If he's not a doiris, you have what to work with, you have to determine based on the other kosher signs. By Chagavim, once again we have 4 kosher signs. The 4 legs, the CHULLIN, which the pasuk calls Kra'im, the jumping legs, and the wings, and also that has to cover most. Most of what? We have 2 versions. Conclusion is most of the Urkai and most of the Hekefa as well. Even though he has no Kra'im at this point, but he's going to develop it later, it's okay, like the Zachal grasshopper. We had a very detailed analysis of the Psukim, presented by 2 brises, Tanah Devei Rav and Tanah Yishmael. The conclusion being that according to Tanah Yishmael, it's a klal prat klal which includes the long head as well, and also provided that it is called Chagav. Whereas according to in Rav, we have no source for these 2 halachas because he learns with a klal prat, and it's all based on the question of whether you could combine 2 klalim that are a little bit dissimilar. Talmud Bavli has an issue with that, in which case it ends up being just a klal prat, which is a more limiting formula, limited to the 4 examples, limineu, as opposed to the a long-necked grasshopper, whereas according to Rishmael, it's a more expansive formula which allows the long-headed one as well. At the end of the day, we don't really eat grasshoppers, and halacha bring down that really we have a Messiah for it, and today we don't really have a Messiah, and even the Sfardim, way back when in Morocco, the Orach Chaim at a certain point determined that they should stop eating grasshoppers. Things were getting confused, things were not very clear. In fact, he brings in the Sefer Pri-Torah, the Orach Chaim writes in Yerdea that he had a story that after he enacted his decree that no more grasshoppers, one a fellow decided he's going to be smarter than the rest, and he ate grasshoppers. And that night he had a dream. He was being shown that he was eating non-kosher materials. He got all frightened, and he fixed himself up. So my understanding is that today, whether it's absolutely non-existent or just about, it's based on the fact that we don't really have the Mesiris. In fact, the Mishnah Halachas, he writes that even Sfardim from Morocco have a Mesiris, and but being that they're not in their locale, they're not in their communities, they shouldn't be eating grasshoppers just like the rest of us. Okay, until Ad B'Yas Gol Tzedek, Mer B'Meinu Amen. All the best to you and Atzlachara.